Welcome to our community. Susie Thomas with you this morning. So happy to welcome Jeffrey Paul from Wigs for Kids. Good morning, Jeffrey.
Good morning, Susie. Good to be with you this morning.
Thank you again. Wigs for Kids. Tell us a little bit about the organization and how it got started.
Well, about 35 years ago, a little girl, which was my niece, came running into my spa and cried, "Uncle Jeff, don't let me go without hair." And, of course, at that time period, I didn't know what she was talking about. I thought she was literally telling the story that somebody had bullied her on the playground or something about her hair. And at that time, I was doing celebrity hair cutting and styling of people all over the United States, runway models, and the President of the United States. And I had no idea what she was talking about until her dad said she has leukemia. And at that time period, I don't know if you know, that was just when the wonder drug, they called it, chemotherapy came out, but had a side effect of hair loss. And she was getting ready to get into a gymnastic competition, and just so happened that the time that her hair was going to fall out, she was going to be in that competition that she'd tried so hard to be a part of. So I made a promise that she would have hair. And, of course, 35 years ago, I didn't know what I was promising, really, although I studied in Europe and knew how to make wigs, but more for fashion, but not to stay on for a gymnastic competition and, perspiration and everything else that takes place. The next morning, after we cut her in, because it just got there just in time, but she ran around. I don't know if you remember the Dorothy Hamill haircut, but she had one of those, and she looked so cute, but she ran around the spa, but we couldn't put the same, condition there. But the next morning, we're there, my wife and I, Zena, arm in arm, just in trepidation. What happens if this little girl, while she's in front of all of her peers, and her hairpiece falls off? Well, the whole event went on and went down to the last exercise. And she was staying on. Everything was great, and she gets ready to run down the mats, hit the trampoline, and jump over the horse. And she looks at me, Susie. She literally eyeballs me from the floor. Everything for me stopped. Literally, and she took off. She came down, slapped both sides, perfect,
stuck
looked up at me. I'm crying like a little baby, and I truly heard God's voice speak to me at that moment and say, "I'm going to take you and your talents of making beautiful people more beautiful, and now make people beautiful inside and out." I didn't even know what that all meant, but I was only going to make one hairpiece. Well, 35 years later, and thousands of children that have gone through Wigs for Kids at no cost whatsoever to them has obviously changed my life and my career from those short little words of, "Uncle Jeff, don't let me go without hair."
My goodness. I wish I knew the end of the story, so I shouldn't ask this, but I need to know, how did she do then? How
She did incredible. She beat leukemia.
Wow.
She grew older. Of course, she started out when she was 11 years old. She went to college. She was so moved by this, she was going to go into medicine. But because her immune system had been compromised, she had passed away out of Legionnaire's disease.
Oh, dear.
But she's left a legend that isn't done, and she was the kind of girl that was, she knew the Lord, she loved God, and every time she was in the hospital getting, an IV, she was walking down and greeting the kids that were just coming in and giving them hope. I mean, she was just an absolute angel.
And what a legacy. My goodness.
Yeah.
You say how many children now have received wigs as they go through this?
Thousands and thousands of kids. We are the oldest. We actually started the first wig bank for kids. Originally, that was its name, was the Wig Bank. And, the funny story is the media got the story because, I had been doing a lot of celebrity stuff, and they would pick up on that. And I said to the interviewer, I said, "Listen, if anybody's got a wig out there, let them bring it in, and I'll clean it up. We'll give it away for free." Well, 500 wigs show up on my doorstep the next day.
Wow.
But they were so awful. I would have never given them to anybody.
And be careful what you ask for.
With their hearts. Yeah, that's right. And it was an interesting experience, but that the Lord has a way of working all things together for the good, and He did. He just kept putting in one step after another. When you see a child smile, and you see a child go from even their body posture is crunched over, it's saying, I'm embarrassed, I feel awful, people make fun of me, and you put hair back on them. It's not about the hair any longer, because the hair follicle maybe attached to the hair, but it's really attached to their self-esteem. They're growing up. And the neat part about it is we got kids now that have grown up, and
that's right.
they've become moms, they've become dads, they've become important people in the community. So many have done major impact, and it wouldn't have been possible, as they tell me, had they not had the opportunity to really have a handmade prosthetic, because it's not really like a wig like you picture it. They can swim, they can sleep, they can do gymnastics, they can go sleepovers, they can do whatever a child is and desires to want to do. And that's why we call our mission statement that we help a child look themselves and live their life with beauty inside and out. And that's, each kid's different. I've got some kids that are football players and some kids that are ballet dancers and, that type of thing.
I keep going back to the fact that your very first wig had to pass the gymnastics test. She couldn't be on the debate team or something like that. The fact that you had to put it through that, and I bet you were holding your breath as she was doing that last tumbling act.
It was
How did you do it? Can you give away a trade secret? How do you make them so secure that she was able to do something like that?
I look back at that point and what we did then, which I'll share with you, but what we do now is so much more sophisticated.
Yeah.
But back then, because wigs, there's a sophistication and design that building a smaller head wig hairpiece is not easy. It's just not. It's an optical illusion practically. And so I contacted the Lime Cooler prosthetic company, which were wonderful friends of mine that make limbs and arms, and I called the Cleveland Clinic maxillofacial department, which does eyes and nose and ears and that type of thing. And I pleaded my case. I said, I need your help. I can get a wig made, but I need to really have, the securities and everything else. So they worked with me like, they were working on their own daughter. And so we came up with specialized in medical adhesives. At that time, they were only using toupee tape or, matte tape and that type of thing. But we came up with a medical adhesive that they use in prosthetics, like the eyes and ears and that type of thing. And we contoured, like the prosthetics of legs and arms were made. And we had it, put together. But at that point, Susie, it wasn't even human hair because we didn't have the ponytail donation. We didn't have all of that, which I'll tell you if you'd like to hear about how that came about.
Yes, I want to get to that, yes.
But it was still hand-tied. And hand-tied means that you could move your head and it swings around and it's just beautiful, as you can imagine Dorothy Hamill.
Right.
But kids want to sleep on a hairpiece, or they want to be themselves in ponytails, and synthetic just does not meet the match, and it's a bit hotter as well. So one day, I was dealing with that. I was in my private practice, because I'd actually closed my spa, my complete business, got everybody, all my staff, big team, their own jobs, their own businesses, and I went in with my wife, and everybody thought we were crazy, into hair replacement, totally.
Wow, yes, wow.
And it again, God works all things together for the good. He blossomed our business because at that point, remember, chemotherapy was just, coming out of the woodwork or the medical practice, and there was a need now. There was a great need. So as I was dealing with a real, older woman in my private practice, and her daughter was with me in the consultation, and she was sitting on her hair. Her hair was so beautiful, long, blonde, and she had said she had not cut it. 23 years old, and had not cut her hair except for trimming the edges. She loved her hair. And so we went through the consultation with her mom, and at the end she says, Mr. Paul, I need to ask you something, and my mom doesn't know I'm going to ask this. She said, would you allow me to cut my hair from my mom's wig? And at that moment, it was like, I get choked up even now, because it was like, we had never thought of this. 35 years, 32 years ago, you didn't think about that for for donation. And I said, yes, again, not knowing what that was going to entail. So we did it. It stretched us to the limit, just like Laura's, hairpiece with the gymnastics. But I saw what happened to the mother. I saw what happened to me. I saw what happened to the young girl. She felt like she was a part of the mom's cure.
Yes.
And I said, you know what, we've got to put this together. So that began a campaign to have all adults, kids, boys, women, girls, to donate their ponytails, to put them into hair pieces.
Yes.
Well, that accelerates cost, that accelerates technology that goes into the process and a lot of management, but we were able to do it. And to this day, we provide children with wigs that other people, over 15 to 20 other people, have donated to make one wig.
For one wig. I wondered
For one
about that.
wig. Yeah.
And you're able somehow to match color from person to person to put something all together for someone?
Well, we actually blend that. We take all the ponytails that we get in. And again, the ponytails make up about one-third the cost, maybe a little bit more than one-third of the cost of the hairpiece, especially when it's a hairpiece that's hand-tied with virgin hair. And a hairpiece like that would cost anyone, if they walked into a private practice, $4,000 or $5,000.
Right.
No exaggeration.
Oh, phew.
Probably couldn't get it that way. But back to your question, the relationship of blending the hair, we take the hair that we get because we have every color under the sun, and we blend a series of a color ring that has, multiple colors that are blended together so they don't have to pick a black or a brown or a blonde. And because it's human hair, it can also be colored to, to low light or to,
Sure.
we even had them want to put the ombre on, and, because some of these girls are 14 and 21 years old, and they want to look their very best, and they want to look like everybody else.
Sure.
So we've been able, that's part of the methodology that we came up with our factories, that we're able to take and blend the hairs to a series of a coloring that they select when they're being consulted and go through the fitting and everything else. And they pick the color closest to their color. And it's amazing because, we've had some really unusual colors, but the most important part is that the child looks themselves and lives their life.
Yes. And you're working hair by hair. I can't imagine. All right, there must be some kind of machines that you use. But back then, was this just you and your wife figuring out how to do this?
Well, there's still to this day no machine that does it.
So it's still hand done?
Every hair, one hair at a time.
How large is your staff?
Well, we've got, my staff is all over the United States because we've trained hairdressers all over the United States to be able to facilitate the child because, in Nebraska, in L.A., in Florida, in Texas, we've actually put a whole program together for salons that say, hey, I want help. I want to do this.
Perfect.
They can either be trained and certified how to cut the ponytails, what we call harvest it, because you can take and cut a ponytail and lose a great deal of hair of value that's going to end up on the floor, or worse, they don't package it right and it can't be used. So we teach them that on a video series online, and then we do the same thing with fitting the children, psychology of talking to a child going through this and their parents, and there's a whole series that they get certified. And so that helps a lot because, they can't all come to Cleveland, Ohio or Westlake, Ohio, obviously. And we have had calls from the most incredible places that we've been able to find salons that would really participate. And so that's a really big part of it. And then we have 3 different factories that have helped us develop this because when you talk about, 100, 200, 300, 400, 500, 600 hair pieces a year, that's a lot of hair pieces because you got about 150,000 hairs per hair piece.
Oh, my goodness. My goodness.
So it is intense. It is intense. But you know what? It's been a joyride, not without challenges and difficulties, but a joyride every time that a child, Susie, smiles. It reminds me of Laura every time.
Yeah.
And it just never gets old. And it's my wife and I said no child will ever pay for a wig. Unless we have to close up because we'll do it out of our pocket like we started that way. But people have donated hair, people have donated money, people have been supportive in volunteer work, and the salons have done their job. And and people like the media that you represent help us tell the story because who thinks about a kid? Because they always think of cancer,
right?
Like my Laura. But my goodness, the biggest change that has happened in the last 10 years for us, and even more over the last 2 years, is alopecia, which is an autoimmune disease, healthy child, but their hair can all fall out, or trichotillomania, which is more challenging because it's a compulsive disorder that they pull their hair out, or lupus or other things, or even like I'm doing a burn child coming up in the next couple of weeks. Those are the diseases that have hair loss forever. So we have to repeat their service and the process every year, and we promise that to them.
Wow.
So every year that we have to replace that because it does wear thin and it begins to lose hair after that time period because, again, it's hand-tied and they live their normal lifestyle. They don't have to be limited to sit in a chair. But in turn, that means we have the new children coming in, and then we have the children from the previous years repeating their services. So it's been exponential over the last couple of years in our charity.
Well, we certainly want to let people know how they can help and participate. We need to take a short break here. We'll be back with Jeffrey Paul from Wigs for Kids after these words. You're listening to Our Community.